Hello, this is Papa B reading, and I am continuing with the second part of chapter 11 of The Magician's Nephew. Chapter 11 is titled Diggory and His Uncle Are Both in Trouble. And this is part, again, as I said, The Magician's Nephew, which is the first book in the complete chronicles of Narnia, written by C.S. Lewis, and which is published by HarperCollins. And I begin. "This is the boy," said Aslan, looking not at Diggory, but at his counselors. "This is the boy who did it." "Oh dear," thought Diggory, "what have I done now?" "Son of Adam," said the lion, "there is an evil witch abroad in my new land of Narnia. Tell these good beasts how she came here." A dozen different things that he might say flashed through Diggory's mind, but he had the sense to say nothing except the exact truth. "I brought her, Aslan," he answered in a low voice. "For what purpose? I wanted to get her out of my own world back into her own. I thought I was taking her back to her own place. How came she to be in your world, son of Adam?" By magic." The lion said nothing, and Diggory knew that he had not told enough. "It was my uncle, Aslan," he said. "He sent us out of our own world by magic rings. At least I had to go because he sent Polly first. And then we met the witch in a place called Charn, and she just held on to us when—" "You met the witch?" said Aslan in a low voice, which had the threat of a growl in it. "She woke up," said Diggory wretchedly, and then turning very white, I woke her up because I wanted to know what would happen if I struck a bell. Polly didn't want to. It wasn't her fault. I fought her. I knew I shouldn't have. I think I was a bit enchanted by the writing under the bell." "Do you?" asked Aslan, speaking very low and deep. "No," said Diggory. "I see now I wasn't. I was only pretending." There was a long pause, and Diggory was thinking all the time, "I've spoiled everything. There's no chance of getting anything from Mother now." When the lion spoke, it was not to Diggory. "You see, friends," he said, "that before the new clean world I gave you is 7 hours old, a force of evil has already entered it, waked and brought hither by this son of Adam." The beasts, even Strawberry, all turned their eyes on Diggory till he felt that he wished the ground would swallow him up. "But do not be cast down," said Aslan, still speaking to the beasts. "Evil will come of that evil, but it is still a long way off, and I will see to it that the worst falls upon myself. In the meantime, let us take such order that for many 100 years yet this shall be a merry land in a merry world. And as Adam's race has done the harm, Adam's race shall help to heal it. Draw near, you other two." The last two words were spoken to Polly and the cabby who had now arrived. Polly, all eyes and mouth, was staring at Aslan and holding the cabby's hand rather tightly. The cabby gave one glance at the lion and took off his bowler hat. No one had yet seen him without it. When it was off, he looked younger and nicer, and more like a countryman and less like a London cabman. "Son," said Aslan to the cabby, "I have known you long. Do you know me?" "Well, no, sir," said the cabby. Leastwise not in an ordinary manner of speaking. Yet I feel somehow if I may make so free, as how we've met before." "It is well," said the lion. "You know better than you think you know, and you shall live to know me better yet. How does this land please you?" "It's a fair treat, sir," said the cabby. "Would you like to live here always?" "Well, you see, sir, I'm a married man," said the cabby. "If my wife was here, neither of us would ever want to go back to London, I reckon. We're both country folks, really." Aslan threw up his shaggy head, opened his mouth, and uttered a long, single note. Not very loud, but full of power. Polly's heart jumped in her body when she heard it. She felt sure that it was a call, and that anyone who heard that call would want to obey it, and what's more, would be able to obey it however many worlds and ages lay between. And so, though she was filled with wonder, she was not really astonished or shocked when all of a sudden a young woman with a kind, honest face stepped out of nowhere and stood beside her. Polly knew at once that it was the cabbie's wife, fetched out of our world not by any tiresome magic rings, but simply, quickly, and sweetly as a bird flies to its nest. The young woman had apparently been in the middle of a washing day, for she wore an apron, her sleeves were rolled up to the elbow, and there were soap suds on her hands. If she had had time to put on her good clothes, her best hat had imitation cherries on it, she would have looked dreadful. As it was, she looked rather nice. Of course, she thought she was dreaming. That was why she didn't rush across to her husband and ask him what on earth had happened to them both. But when she looked at the lion, she didn't feel quite so sure it was a dream. Yet for some reason she did not appear to be very frightened. Then she dropped a little half-curtsy, as some country girls still knew how to do in those days. After all, she went and put her hand into the cabbie's and stood there looking around her a little shyly. "My children," said Aslan, fixing his eyes on both of them, "you are to be the first king and queen of Narnia." The cabbie opened his mouth in astonishment, and his wife turned very red. "You shall rule and name all these creatures, and do justice among them, and protect them from their enemies when enemies arise, and enemies will arise, for there is an evil witch in this world." The cabbie swallowed hard 2 or 3 times and cleared his throat. "Begging your pardon, sir," he said, "and thanking you very much, I'm sure, which my missus does the same, but I ain't no sort of chap for a job like that. I never had much education, you see." "Well," said Aslan, "could you use a spade and a plow and raise food out of the earth?" "Yes, sir, I could do a bit of that sort of work, being brought up in it, like." "Can you rule these creatures kindly and fairly, remembering that they are not slaves like the dumb beasts of the world you were born in, but talking beasts and free subjects?" "I see that, sir," replied the cabbie. "I'll try to do the square thing by them all." "And would you bring up your children and your grandchildren to do the same?" "It be up to me to try, sir. I'd do my best, wouldn't we, Nellie? And you wouldn't have favorites either among your own children or among the other creatures, or let any hold another under or use it hardly?" "I never abide by such things going on, sir, and that's the truth. I'd give 'em what for if I caught 'em at it." And the cabbie, although his conversation was growing slower and richer, more like the country voice he must have had as a boy, and less like the sharp, quick voice of a cockney. "And if enemies came against the land, for enemies will arise, and there was war, would you be the first in the charge and the last in the retreat?" "Well, sir," said the cabbie very slowly, "a chap don't exactly know till he's been tried. I dare say I might turn out ever such a soft un. Never did no fighting except with my fists. I'd try, that is, I hope I'd try to do my bit." "Then," said Aslan, "you will have done all that a king should do. Your coronation will be held presently, and you and your children and grandchildren shall be blessed. And some will be kings of Narnia, and others will be kings of Archenland, which lies yonder over the southern mountains. And you, little daughter," here he turned to Polly, "are welcome. Have you forgiven the boy for the violence he did you in the Hall of Images, in the desolate palace of accursed Charn?" "Yes, Aslan, we made it up," said Polly. "That is well," said Aslan. "And now for the boy himself." And that completes chapter 11, which is titled, again, Diggory and his uncle are both in trouble. And that is chapter 11 of The Magician's Nephew, the first book in the complete chronicles of Narnia. This is Papa B. Please come back and let me read to you again.